Our Bible text is Mark, a portion of verse 36. Don't be afraid, just believe. So here in the Gospel of Mark, we now enter a section where Jesus defeats the forces of evil. Overall, Jesus is busy with his ministry in Galilee. That's more or less from chapters 1 to 8. And then part of the narrative, for example, is that controversy cycle where the authority of Jesus is questioned. And then in chapter 3, he gives many parables. Here we have a long section. Specifically, if we go at chapter 4, verses 35 to 5, verse 43, is where Jesus defeats the forces of evil. Because here Jesus confronts powers, especially he has mastery over the sea and the wind, where Jesus subdues the sea. He also exorcises a demon there with a demoniac, and also two miracle narratives that are intertwined. That is where Jesus heals the daughter or raises her back to life from death, the daughter of Jairus, and where Jesus also cures that woman with a flow of blood. And so Jesus here confronts illness, he confronts death, he confronts demons. It also believes that the waters were the powers where evil powers are present, etc. So yeah, Jesus overcomes them and he conquers them. So that's also very important. Jesus, he was a magnificent teacher, a teacher with authority, but he was also a very powerful healer, an exorcist, and worker of miracles. I mean, that's the thing of Mark's gospel. The authority of Jesus to teach and to perform miracles was unmatched. He was nothing that was seen before. Of course, he's the Son of God, but now this power and authority of Jesus is revealed over and over again. Now, if you look at our present Bible text, it forms part of something that is called sandwiching, or what the author, our gospel author, evangelist, he used this technique called sandwiching. The more technical term is intercalation. But the idea is he starts a story, a narrative, and then he interrupts it with something else, and then he comes back to the original narrative that he's busy with. And that happens several times, these sandwiches in the Gospel of Mark. I'll just give a few examples. For example, if you go to Mark 11, there where Jesus curses a fig tree as he approaches the temple. Then, of course, Jesus, he enters the temple and he cleanses the temple, he overturns the table of the money changers, etc. And then after that, that story of the fig tree is concluded, because there the withered fig tree is discovered. Now the important thing is that these stories, and that's like the sandwiching where it begins, it's interrupted, and then it finishes again here at the bottom. It's done like that because the author is also telling us you must see the one in light of the other, because they both work together to tell you something specific. And yeah, if you look at this sandwiching technique in chapter 11, where Jesus curses the fig tree and where he also cleanses the temple, it tells us there about the judgment on Israel, right? Because they're not bearing fruit, especially the leaders of Israel. Because by Jesus cleansing the temple, he's confronting the high priests who controlled the temple. So it's about confronting a fruitless Israel, especially the leadership of Israel. The next sandwich you can look at is we go to Mark 3. There, firstly, where Jesus' own family thinks he's crazy. And then the religious leaders reject him. They say he's from Beelzebub or what have you. And then Jesus goes back to the original story of his family, because the family of Jesus asked him, they want to speak to you, and then Jesus redefines what true family is. And those two narratives together tells you this is who belongs to God's family. Those who believe in Jesus, those who do not think he's crazy or reject him. Now, in our present pericope, our present textual unit, we have the same feature of the sandwiching. if you can say, like the bread of the sandwich. That is the request for healing by Jairus. And then, of course, it's concluded where Jesus raises the daughter of Jairus back to life. And the meat in the sandwich is that woman with the flow of blood or hemorrhage, where Jesus also heals her. And these two stories together also tell us specifically about the importance of faith. For example, if you go to chapter 5, verses 34, Jesus tells that woman with a flow of blood, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Right? And then in our present textual unit, Jesus specifically says, and that's also a Bible text, as it says in the New King James Version, "Do not be afraid, only believe." Or since this specific word comes from a New International Version, it just says something similar. Don't be afraid, just believe. So our present sandwich is about faith, believing in Jesus, because he's the one with incredible, unparalleled authority to teach, to heal. He's the Son of God, etc. So just remember the sandwich effect here. Now, if we look at what's most applicable is here where Jesus raises the daughter of Jairus. Jesus, the other forces of evil he conquered, of course, was when they crossed the Sea of Galilee and there was a massive storm. And then Jesus just said, "Be quiet, be still," and it calmed down. And of course, the disciples were amazed and said, "Who is this? Who can this be?" And then when Jesus crossed over, he was in the land of the Gerasenes, or some manuscripts, Gadarenes. It's different in the manuscripts. But anyway, it's an area to the southeast of the Sea of Galilee, Gentile territory. And of course, where Jesus encountered that demoniac and he drove the demons out of him. It went into the herd of pigs that went down the precipice, etc. And then the people there eventually asked him, "Please leave us, go away from here." But that healed man, he proclaimed in that area what Jesus had done for him. But then Jesus returned, he crossed over back the Sea of Galilee, probably to Capernaum, back to Jewish territory. And there were many people that waited for him there on the beach, and they welcomed him. And yeah, Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, came to him, fell down on his knees, and he begged Jesus, "Please come touch my daughter. Lay your hands on her, save her. She's near the point of death." So yeah, Jairus, he's also on his knees. He shows this respect and reverence for Jesus. He recognizes in Jesus this person with special authority and capability to do things. Of course, as a ruler of the synagogue, he's probably one of the main teachers. Even you could have maybe even been a priest, because the priests were the main teachers of the people at this time. And they were active also all over. But anyway, Jairus' daughter, he comes to Jesus and asks him for help. We can read, he says, "My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live." So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Of course, yeah, with the sandwich situation, it's here where the story of that woman with the flow of blood is told. Another thing we can say, apart from that, the importance of faith, which is the main crux, another part of the sandwich, as we can put it, it's also here Jesus heals women. Right? First, the woman with the flow of blood, and the little girl who's 12 years old. And there's also an issue of ritual impurity, which evidently doesn't affect Jesus, because that woman with the flow of blood, she touched him. Anything or anybody she touched, she would have put into a state of ritual impurity. According to the law, it was a severe state of ritual impurity. But Jesus is not affected by it, because she touched him, and of course she was healed. And Jesus didn't run away to the nearest ritual bath to purify himself. He just walked on to perform the healing of the young girl, because also death was the worst form of ritual impurity. If you had contact with a corpse or was just in the same room as a corpse, you received or contracted ritual impurity. And that was the worst form of ritual impurity. It took a ritual that lasted 7 days to get rid of that form of impurity. But Jesus is not bothered. The woman with the flow of blood touches him, and he goes into the room where there's a dead girl. That also doesn't bother him. He goes there to heal her. So Jesus is also not affected by this ritual purity. So in addition to that important aspect of faith, there's also the issue of Jesus healing two women and two females, and also the aspect that Jesus is not really affected by the question of ritual impurity. So the meat of the sandwich is where Jesus heals the woman with the flow of blood, and now we come back to the original story. The raising of Jairus' daughter back to life. If we go ahead to verse 35, because now Jesus was dealing with this woman of the flow of blood, then it says, while he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? So here Jesus is also addressed as teacher. That's another thing in the Gospel of Mark. Jesus is this authoritative teacher. Ready if you go back to chapter 1, verses 22. The people are astonished at his teaching, because they say, he doesn't teach like one of the scribes. He teaches as one with authority. So that's Jesus. He teaches with incredible authority. And of course, now he heals, performs miracles with great authority as well. So the people said, the girl's dead, why bother the teacher? And now Jesus responds. As soon as Jesus heard the words that were spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, I'll read from our Bible text as it says in the NIV, don't be afraid, just believe. Again, the sandwich is about the importance of faith in Jesus. So then Jesus proceeds. He goes to the girl's house and he takes, of course, his inner circle of disciples, Peter, James, and John with him. And they enter the house and there are people that are mourning and wailing, etc. At this time, you were expected to hire mourners. They came there to play flutes, to mourn, also to wail. Maybe there's also a form of song with clapping of hands. But professional mourners were hired at this time if there was a death. So they were already there. There were already preparations for the funeral, etc., because that little girl had to be buried before sunset. Then Jesus, of course, tells them, what's all this noise? The girl's not dead, she's asleep. So these mourners who are hired laugh at him. They make fun of Jesus. But then Jesus chases them out and says, go away. And then they enter the room specifically where this girl was lying down. Then Jesus also tells her this, if we go to our Bible word. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kumi, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Take note that in the Gospel of Mark, many Aramaic sayings of Jesus are recorded. Of course, there's Aramaic words of Jesus found also in Paul's letters, the Gospel of Matthew, etc. But especially in Mark, the Aramaic of Jesus. Remember, Jews of this time, they spoke Aramaic. They did not speak Hebrew. Of course, some spoke Aramaic and Greek, but Aramaic was the main language spoken by the Jews of Palestine, Judea and Galilee at this time. And it's the Gospel of Mark especially who preserves this language that Jesus spoke. Of course, we have it in transliteration from the Aramaic. It was then transliterated into Greek, or Koine Greek, as it was spoken and written at that time. Of course, now we get the English translation from the Greek. So we kind of 3 levels removed from the Aramaic of Jesus. But at least Mark gives us an insight that Jesus spoke Aramaic. If we go to Mark 3 verses 17, for example, where Jesus refers to James and John as Boanerges, or that's based really on the Aramaic Benai Regesh. So you can see even the Greek and the English is very different to the original Aramaic. If we go to Mark 5, that's our present Bible unit or textual unit where Jesus says, Talitha Kumi, little girl, I say to you, arise. Later in Mark 7, Korban, which means a gift to God. Also in Mark 7, the Greek has it as Ephatha, be opened. Of course, the underlying Aramaic is quite different. Mark 10, Bartimaeus, or son of Timaeus, Abba, we're familiar with that, Father. Also Mark 15, Golgotha, place of a skull. Then also Mark 15, the cry of Jesus on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. So remember, this is like the Greek transliteration of an underlying Aramaic, which also sounds quite different as an Aramaic. Aramaic was a very guttural kind of language to speak. So take note that we have some insight to the Aramaic of Jesus, the original language of Jesus and his disciples, etc. So he tells her, Talitha Kumi, little girl, I say to you, arise. Then it says the girl arose immediately, and she was well. She was 12 years old. She's a young girl. And then Jesus also tells them, or her parents, who was also there in the room, give her something to eat. Then also another idea comes through here, the idea of the messianic secret. That's also throughout the Gospel of Mark. Jesus tells the demons or whoever, whenever he performs an exorcism or a miracle, he tells them, shh, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Because as yet, Jesus doesn't want to be revealed as such, as the Messiah or whatever, because probably because the people had a different expectation of what the Messiah will be and do, etc. But of course, the people were overcome with amazement. But then Jesus tells them, if we go read verse 43, but he commanded them strictly that no one should know it. So that's the messianic secret I spoke about. And he said that something should be given her to eat. So this larger textual unit of Mark, from chapter 4 verse 35 to 5 verse 43, where Jesus defeats the forces of evil, he calms the storm on the sea, he exorcises a demon, he heals illness and disease and death, which was understood at this time that this was maybe a punishment from God, but also the forces of evil who were in control of it. And Jesus conquers and defeats these forces of evil.